Okay then guys, here we go. Today I am making Brunkager, traditional Danish Christmas biscuits. They're thin, crisp, full of spice and absolutely perfect for Christmas. So let's get baking. And for this we're going to need some plain flour, soft brown sugar, various spices. I'm using ginger, cardamom, cloves and cinnamon. I'm adding hazelnuts and orange zest to mine. We need some baking soda, some butter and a choice of syrups. You can use either golden syrup, black syrup, or I'm using a mix of maple syrup and black treacle. The quantities I'm using here will make about, 40 to 60 thin biscuits or 30 or 40 thicker biscuits. Then again, it all depends on how thickly you roll the log and how thinly you slice the biscuits at the end. So first up then, 125 grams of butter and 60 grams of syrup. Like I said, either golden syrup or dark syrup. And I'm using a mix of maple syrup, 40 odd grams and 20 grams of dark treacle. The dark treacle will give it a little bit of a festive boost, I reckon. And once the treacle decides it wants to come off the spoon, it's time to put the pan on a low heat and gently melt the butter and syrups together. And while that's slowly melting, weigh out the flour. I'm using plain flour, 275 grams. And a half a teaspoon of baking soda, otherwise known as sodium bicarbonate. And mix the dry bits together. When the butter's just about melted, it's time to start adding things. I'm using 60 grams of chopped hazelnuts for this. Almonds would work well as well. And in with the spices. 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. 1/2 to 3/4 of a teaspoon of ground cloves. Be careful with this, it can be overpowering. 1/2 teaspoon of ginger, or a little bit more if you like them to be more like ginger biscuits, and 1/4 teaspoon of cardamom. And 125 grams of soft brown sugar. I'm using a dark soft brown sugar for this one, seeing as Brunkager means brown cookies. I thought it'd be quite brown. Back on the heat to melt the sugar. You could have put the sugar in to start off with. Doesn't really matter. I wanted to be more in control of it, so I did it slowly. And last but not least is the grated zest of half an orange. And again, you can add a bit more if you want it more orangey. Do be careful if you're using a microplane like me. They make short work of fingerprints, I'll tell you. And once the sugar's melted, add the wet to the dry and give it all a good mixing. I started off with a chopstick just to get things moving, but I quickly swapped over to my broad kisker, a Danish whisk. Danish Christmas biscuits, Danish whisk, how appropriate. This really is a great bit of kit. It makes short work of heavy doughs and things like this. And it doesn't force too much gluten to form either, unlike a spoon or a fork. I'll pop a link to one in the description below. And when everything's combined, tip it out onto your work surface and shape it up a little bit. I realise at this point it's a bit too big to work with, so I cut it in half and rolled each half into a sausage, about 3 to 4 millimeters in diameter. Wrap the logs in cling film and put them in the fridge at least 6 hours. I left mine overnight. This intensifies the flavours quite considerably and it makes it a darn sight easier to cut the biscuit shapes out of the log. Okay, then here we are next day, like I said, 24 hours later. Now, you want to work quite quickly here, so have everything ready. Get your baking tray with baking parchment on it ready, get your knife ready, and get your oven preheated to 180 Celsius. The reason I say we're working quick is we do not want this butter and syrup to start melting. And I was quite surprised how hard this is. It cut really, really easily. I was expecting a right old mess, but look at this. I'm cutting about 3mm rounds, so that's what, 1/8 of an inch in old money. I realised halfway through that my baking tray probably wasn't big enough. And because I wanted to make some thin and some thick to compare the texture, I cut the remainder into 6mm rounds and popped those onto a different tray. And to ensure that they were different textures, I cooked both lots for the same time, and that was 8 minutes, 180 Celsius. Out of the oven after 8 minutes and onto a rack to cool down. If you leave them on the tray, they might go soggy. Nice and cold now, onto a plate, a quick photo shoot, and well, time for a taste, I reckon. They even sound crispy. Okay then, it's got to be done. Here's the little thin ones. Crispy. Oh, they are so good. All the fragrance of the festive season. Excuse me chomping away here, guys. And these are the thicker ones. They should be a bit, yeah, they're a bit more cookie-like. Oh, they're good. I am going to be doing these again. That little bit of ginger in there and the cardamom, you can just taste it. It's almost like it's teasing you, you know, it's there. Oh, this is definitely a double diggy thumbs up, guys. It's one of the nicest, well, certainly cookies or biscuits I've ever made. Incredible.